There are at least two games on the docket here in Week 9 that are season-defining games in the NAIA here in 2023. You know what? Actually, we could go so far as to say they're de facto conference championships. They're really not, but they are on the lineup for the NAI in Week 9, and we're looking forward to talking about it. Hi, I'm Joey McWilliams here on Midwest Sportsnet, and it is going to be I'm going to say an abbreviated show, even though it's going to, probably be a little bit longer. However, we are going to go over all of the games. I'm just praying that my voice holds out for all of it. It's been a long week. I'm sure everyone has had a week like I've had at some point in time in your life. So it's all right. Let's just go ahead and talk football for a little while, okay? On the docket in Week 9, Olivet Nazarene on the road at St. Francis. The Tigers are coming into this one with a record of 4-3. Losing to Roosevelt last week on the Lakers' farewell to the NAIA tour. Roosevelt, by the way, putting itself in a position for a playoff spot. We'll talk about that when we get down to them. St. Francis defeated St. Ambrose. Most everyone has this year. St. Francis, 20-10 all-time in this series, won 35-21 in 2022. We're taking St. Francis, the Fighting Saints, the Fighting Tumulties, unless you're Carl Bew and you happen to show up and just light things up as he did last week as well. So Olivet Nazarene at St. Francis, we're taking the Fighting Saints in this one. Lawrence Tech on the road at Siena Heights. Lawrence Tech 1-6 on the year. Siena Heights 4-0 all-time in this series, by the way. Won 34-14 in 2012. Lawrence Tech lost to St. Francis of Indiana last week by 49. Siena Heights with a big victory over Concordia. And I think if you look at the Mid-States Mid-East and you think about what Concordia is doing, which we'll get to those big three here in just a moment, St. Francis not been a part of the big three so far this year, making a case here as the conference portion of the schedule comes along. 4-3 are the Saints, and 4-0 again all time in this series. We're taking the Saints in this one. Moving on along, Cumberland at St. Andrews. St. Andrews fell to Kentucky Christian last week. A tough loss, 18-15. Cumberland lost to Bethel as well. That's a tough loss, but you expect that with what the Wildcats have done. Cumberland has played St. Andrews just one time prior to this year. 24-22, the victory in 2019. We're going to go ahead and go with the Phoenix in this one as well. We talked about some of those big players in the Mid-States, Mid-East. Concordia, 5-2. Coming off a loss to Siena Heights last week, Concordia was 5-0 prior to the last couple of weeks, and then picking up the loss there against Siena Heights, a 3-point loss, but still, it was a big one. On the road at Madonna, Concordia has won all three matchups with Madonna, and Madonna giving up or actually scoring 5.4 points per game. That is 93rd out of 94 teams in the NAIA. Yeah, it's not that much. We're going to go ahead and take the Cardinals in this one. By the way, Concordia is scoring more points than Kentucky Christian, but that's neither here nor there at the moment. Marion, we talked about some more of the big three there in the Mid-States, Mid-East. How about what Marion has done? Simply gone undefeated. Number 5 in the country, depending upon which ranking system you're looking at. Marion 7-0. Taylor at home 2-6. Taylor's last victory in this series was in 2009, a 1-point victory, 36-35. It's the only time Taylor has ever beaten Marion in this series, as the Knights own a 15-1 advantage all time. Taylor defeated Madonna last week. Taylor has 1 win, 6 losses, and 1 win. Again, that over the winless Crusaders. We're going to go with the Knights in this one to go to 8-0. Another team we expect to go to 8-0 on the season is Indiana Wesleyan, as the Wildcats are continuing to roll. Number 4 in the country, depending upon which poll that you look at, could be as high as number 3, tied for that spot. Indiana Wesleyan defeated Madonna a couple of weeks ago, had a bye week, and the Wildcats have won 16 consecutive regular season games. St. Francis lost to Marion last week. Indiana Wesleyan has such a powerful offense with Xander Stokes finding Levi Tidwell and more. And then, of course, to Darian Williams, who has 144 rushing yards per game. That is second in the NAI. We're taking Indiana Wesleyan in this one. Arizona Christian, it's been a struggle of a season for the Firestorm. 2-6 overall On the road at Montana Tech, it's been a brutal introduction to the Frontier Conference for Arizona Christian. Lost to Montana Western 34-30 in their last outing, and the Firestorm have lost 5 consecutive contests. Montana Tech losing as well last week, that to Rocky Mountain 28-21. Montana Tech has Wyatt Alexander, by the way, who has quietly risen to the top spot in not only in the Frontier Conference, but in the NAIA, 112.3 receiving yards per game, 7 receiving touchdowns as well. Doesn't look to get any better for Arizona Christian. We're going to take Montana Tech, the Ore Diggers, at home in this one to continue the struggle of a year for Arizona Christian. And we're going to try to make it through all the way through this broadcast. I hope we do. Thanks for watching today. Let us know from where you're watching. If it's a live stream, and if you're watching the replay, thanks again for watching that as well. You see Union up there, 3-4, but what you also see is Reinhardt. And you know what the rule is? We don't pick against Reinhardt for the remainder of this regular season for sure. Maybe for the season. I don't know. But we're not picking against Reinhardt, especially when they're 8-0 all-time in the series against Union. Won 40-0 last year. Now, Union defeated Point last week, 20-13. Actually, that was 2 weeks ago. Reinhardt defeated Point last week, 44-17. And I think part of this has to go with Jerdavian Colbert, who's heading for 1,000 yards rushing, just shy of 700 right now, coached by James Miller. And every time I see Coach Miller's name up there, it reminds me, my elementary school principal was James Miller. And I have to tell you, Coach, to live up to that name is a big thing for me because he shaped my life more than any other principal I had. I really appreciated him. So I think it's an honor to share that name. We wish you well in all of that. Watching from Oregon today, Han Solo, thanks for watching. I appreciate you watching. It's morning time where you are right now, and we'll get to a couple of the Oregon schools along the way too, but thanks for watching on this Friday morning. So we said we would not be voting or picking against Reinhardt for the remainder of this 2023 regular season for sure, possibly all the way on through. We're picking Reinhardt in this one, definitely. Point at Pike Hill. Bill, both of these teams took on Point in their last outing. Point on the road now at Pikeville, 3-5, taking on 5-3. Point lost last week. Pikeville won last week. A big victory, by the way, over Bluefield, 51-42. We're going with the Bears. Lee Kirkland is putting together such a great season, and he's been leading Pikeville. It's going to be a challenge if Reinhardt continues to win out there in the Appalachian. Pikeville, new to the conference, could be looking at an outside opportunity for one of the at-large bids. Of course, Reinhardt, if they win, will continue and take that automatic bid from the league. However, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but Pikeville needs to win out and have a little help along the way. We're taking Pikeville and the Bears, the Fighting Lee Kirklands, in this one. Thomas picked up its first win of the season last weekend, trying to pick up another, and a great place to do it on the road at Weber International. It's the first time these two teams have met. Thomas defeated Warner 38-26 last week, lost 5, won their first one with that victory. Weber International's gone the other direction. Won the first week of the season, lost their last 6 since then, including a game to Florida Memorial. Stayed with it, though, 34-29. That was the final. We think Thomas may be onto something, and we're going to pick Thomas in this one to pick up the second win of the season for the Nighthawks. William Penn on the road at Culver Stockton. William Penn lost to a very tough Peru State team last week. Culver Stockton lost to Clark, both of them tight contest. Culver Stockton 3-1 all time in this series. And you know, we feel like William Penn is doing some things right. It's a new leadership. It's a new situation there for the Statesmen in Oskaloosa. We're going to go with Coach Benavidez to take this win on the road at Culver Stockton. William Penn picks up another victory and moves to 500 on the season. That is our pick here at Midwest Sports Net. Clark on the road at Graceland. Clark with a big win last year, a big win in this series 2 years ago Last year, Graceland pulled off the victory 30-7, but Clark is 3-1 all time. This is a Graceland team that is not at full strength. And if it were a Graceland team at full strength, we're going to pick the Yellow Jackets. It is not at full strength. And Clark on the road could present a problem. However, Graceland has struggled, lost 5 consecutive games. We think they have enough to turn things around here this week at home. And so we're picking the Yellow Jackets in this one to pick up the victory. Coach Ross's team turns the tide just a bit. Thanks for watching us here on this Friday afternoon or morning, wherever you happen to be. If you're watching us live, please let us know from where you're watching us. Appreciate you coming along as we've shifted times for our preview show from Thursday to Friday. And without going too much behind the curtain on all of this, it's been a challenging week. So I've said at the outset, I'm sure everyone has had weeks like that. We had one here as well. Jamestown on the road at Dakota Wesleyan. You have to feel for the Tigers. Tigers have lost a couple of big games, 5-1 to start the season, 2 big losses, and it really puts them out of contention in the GPAC. And so trying to fight for what could possibly be an at-large bid, need to get the win at home in this one. Jamestown lost to Morningside last week, but it was an admirable loss. Can you have an admirable loss? You can if you're up in the fourth quarter on on Morningside, a team that has now won 74 consecutive regular season games. That's right. That's what I said. 39-29, the Jimmies fell to Morningside. Dakota Wesleyan, by the way, lost to Briar Cliff last week by 4. Dakota Wesleyan 13-11 all-time in this series. Jamestown won last year 34-30. We think Dakota Wesleyan, well, we know Dakota Wesleyan needs the win. We think they're going to pick up that win, and it's a big win to turn things around. Keeps the Tigers in contention for an at-large playoff spot. I realize a lot of things have to happen to get to that point. So if you're watching that and you're looking at the NAIA ranking and the ranking system that they have there, and you think Dakota Wesleyan's on the outside looking in. They are, but there's still 3 weeks of regular season play yet to happen. So not cheering necessarily for that, just saying it's a possibility. We're taking Dakota Wesleyan at home. Andrew, thanks for watching from Burlington, Iowa. We'll talk about some Iowa teams coming up as we continue here. Just got through talking about William Penn and Graceland and Clark. By the way, the Clark women's basketball team, defending national champions, getting ready to get their season started as well. St. Mary on the road at Sterling. KCAC competition in the Bissell division. We're going to make it through one cough drop and probably 2 in this one. St. Mary 2-6 overall, and St. Mary lost a tough one, and I mean a tough one, to Kansas Wesleyan last week. Had the lead, had to try to fight off that Coyote team. Kansas Wesleyan making some noise now in the KCAC. Sterling lost big time to Ottawa. We think St. Mary has a little bit of momentum. Won last year 37-11 in the season opener. We're picking the Spires on the road in this one. From the outset, we talked about a couple of games on the schedule this week that are season-defining games. They are de facto conference championships, or in this case, could be a de facto division championship. Doesn't matter. An automatic playoff going to the winner of the Heart South. These are 2 teams that are coming in undefeated in Heart South play. One team, will remain that way. Benedictine and Baker. Baker 21-15 all time in this series. Benedictine won 21-20 last year, and that was against a Baker team. 1-point loss by Baker, by the way, and it was a schedule and a season that really didn't live up to par for the Wildcats overall. The winningest all-time NAIA football program, and the Wildcats have extended that lead to 4 now over Missouri Valley here in 2022. Baker defeated Missouri Baptist last week 41-17. Benedictine helped the Baker cause, defeating Missouri Valley last week 31-7. Baker's won 4 straight coming into this one. Benedictine's won 5 straight coming into this one. Both led by excellent quarterbacks. Benedictine's Jackson Dooley, who has 24 passing touchdowns on the year, 214 passing yards. Truman Julesgaard, 216 passing yards, both of those averages per game. This one could be one that you want to keep your eye on. It definitely is. We're going to take Baker at home. And I know I've been talking about how good Benedictine is and how good they've been this season. It's going to be a tough place to win there in Baldwin. And so the home field advantage is going to be enough for the Wildcats we're picking in this one. We spoke about Missouri Valley on the road at Central Methodist, and the Vikings, excuse me, have a 52-8-1 all-time advantage in the series. However, Central Methodist has won 5 straight, and here's where that's a big number. That means the Eagles actually won last year. It was the lone win of the season for Central Methodist last season, a 14-9 victory for the Eagles over the Vikings. Central Methodist lost to Mid-America Nazarene last week. It was their 6th consecutive loss. We think it's going to be 7 this week. Missouri Valley on the road. We're picking the Vikings in this one. Peru State lost its first 4 games of the season. Since that time, has won its next 4 games, and that includes, oh, there we go. There's a wasp. All right. Well, if it flies into the screen with me, you might see me relocate. We'll see what happens. Anyway, Peru State, there we go. Peru State has struggled against Grandview over the years. Grandview 7-1 in this series all time. I lost my train of thought there. Peru State was doing well, though. Winning 4 in a row coming into this matchup against Grandview. Undefeated on the season, 7-0. 7-0 in the last 7 matchups with Peru State. The lone victory, by the way, for Peru State was an 18-17 win, and this was back in 2008. That was the first season Grandview had a football team that year. Grandview, by the way, the numbers are just crazy. They've won 47 consecutive regular season games. By the way, spoiler alert, we're going to go ahead and pick them in this one. 48 consecutive games, we think, at the end of this day. Defense is giving up 6.7 points a game, tops in the NAIA. Only 220.6 yards of total offense per game. That's also tops in the NAIA. And that includes 48.7 rushing yards per game, tops in the NAIA. They picked off 15 passes this year. Grandview, by the way, in addition to giving up only 6.7 points per game, are putting up 46.3 points per game, second in the NAIA. Can you see how we would tend to pick Grandview in this one? So that's what we're going to do. Grandview with the win tomorrow. Missouri Baptist on the road at Mid-America Nazarene. The Pioneers are really coming along in that Hart South division. It's going to be tough, and it's always tough taking on Benedictine and Baker. Pioneers have a loss to Baker already, play Benedictine at the end of the season. Need to put themselves in a position to be playing for a playoff spot, win or lose, in that final game. And to do so, the Pioneers have to keep winning. They have a good opportunity to do it on their home turf against Missouri Baptist this weekend. Spartans lost to Baker last week, 41-17. Missouri Baptist, as we mentioned, defeated Central Methodist last week. And a win here could actually help them meet last year's win total overall. 7 wins last season. Adrian Parsons leading the way, 291.8 passing yards per game. That is 4th in the NAIA. We're taking Mid-America Nazarene in this one. Evangel on the road at McPherson. This is a tough one. Now, we picked Friends last week on the road at Evangel. Didn't work out so well for that pick. Evangel's defense rose to the occasion, gave up only 11 points. But realistically, that was just 3 points until the very, very end. Cavante Baker able to score for Evangel. Second cough drop. There we go. Evangel 8-0 on the year. And I talk about the defense quite a bit. The offense has been there as well, but the defense has been big time. And Evangel has now won 9 consecutive games. Now think about that for just a moment. The Valor have won 13 of their last 14 contests. This is a team that has gone into 2023 with momentum, heading into a new conference as they're playing in the KCAC this year, playing in that very, very tough Kessinger division. First ever meeting against McPherson. Now, we've been talking about McPherson and Tristan Zabo and the group for quite a while. I think this one's going to be very, very tough for them at home. And so for the second consecutive week involving Evangel, we're taking the road team. We're going with the Valor in this one. Mount Marty and Ken Gay quietly putting some wins together, and Ken Gay moving up the list when you talk about passing and passing touchdowns. He's thrown 26 passing touchdowns this season. Mount Marty is only 3-6 on the year, taking on a Doane team that is winless here in 2023. Mount Marty, we're picking them with the win over Doane. 1-1 all-time in this series. Mount Marty won 27-16 last year. St. Xavier, 4-3. St. Ambrose, 0-7. The Fighting Bees haven't shown much fight this year. St. Xavier, 13-9 all-time in this series. Well, hey, Han Solo, I'm glad that I was able to make you happy in that one. Sorry, by the way, that didn't pick Evangel last week. And you know what? I looked back on it after the show. And let me just go again behind the curtain on this one. Thought that I could have gone a different direction, but because I did make the pick, I went ahead and stuck with it. But the Valor, we do think, going to pick up the victory in that one and move to 9-0 on the season. That would be a 10th consecutive win. Now, back to St. Xavier and St. Ambrose. Both teams with losses last week. St. Xavier, 13-9 all-time. We don't think the Fighting Bees have that much fight in them. We're picking St. Xavier. Another game that is a season-defining game. And also, realistically, it is a conference de facto championship game. Part of the reason is because we're seeing Dordt and Dakota Wesleyan fall away just a little bit out of the hunt. Both of these teams undefeated. Both of these teams have won, or each of these teams has won one of the last two national championships. Northwestern comes into this particular game with a winning streak of 21. They've won 21 consecutive games, 8-0 this year, won their last 13 last season. 8-0, as we mentioned. Morningside, 8-0 also, has won 75 consecutive games. Now think about that for just a moment. 75 consecutive regular season games. Excuse me, I need to clarify that. Regular season games. Didn't win the national championship every time. 3 national championships along the way during that streak. 3 very good quarterbacks in this one, Cash Parker and Lennox Brown from Morningside. I think, by the way, that Coach Ryan at Morningside is just hedging his bet. I think he just doesn't want to go into the playoffs again with just one quarterback with a lot of experience if you have one injured late in the season. Parker and Brown for Morningside. It's Jalen Gramstad for Northwestern. Strong quarterbacks, good running backs on both sides of the ball, good receivers on both sides of the ball, good defense on both sides of the ball. Morningside defeated Jamestown last week, had to come from behind to do that. It is the 15th consecutive season, by the way, that Morningside has had a winning percentage, not just a winning record, a winning percentage of 83 or better. They're winning at a clip of 833 or better for 15 consecutive years. An incredible run for Morningside. 24-9 all time in this series. The Mustangs won the season opener in 2022 against Northwestern, 30-29. You notice I haven't talked about the team from Orange City yet, and that's where this one's going to be played. Northwestern defeated Dordt last week, 35-14. They've won 21 straight games overall. The volleyball team is tied for the top spot in the country, along with Indiana Wesleyan, by the way. Number 1 team in the country. The football team is the number 1 team in the country. They're playing this at Orange City. I know I have some Morningside fans out there, but we're picking Northwestern at home. Things just seem to line up for the Red Raiders and Coach McCarty at home. This is a Morningside team that has won 4 straight in this series, including some playoff games. 10 of 11 overall in this series, including some playoff games. We're going with the Red Raiders in a close one, and I'm really interested to see what the quarterback scenario looks like for Morningside in this one. That'll be a fun one to keep up with tomorrow. Southwestern on the road at Bethany. Southwestern has lost 2 consecutive games, 6-0 to start the season. They've lost 2 straight. Bethany has a 32-29-2 all-time series lead in this one. Southwestern's won the last 7, though, and we're going to pick them to win another one on Saturday. Midland, Concordia. Let's go back to the GPAC for a moment there. Back and forth, GPAC and the KCAC. Midland 5-4, Concordia 3-4. This one at home, though, for Concordia. Midland 38-31-1 all time and won last year. The Bulldogs are due. We think they're going to pick up the win here and bring Midland to 500 on the season on Saturday. Back to the KCAC, why not? Ottawa 4-4, Avila 2-6. Ottawa still trying to put itself in a position for the automatic bid coming out of the Bissell division. This is going to be something you look at and go, this is a team that could be 7-4 getting a playoff spot. That's exactly right. But the Braves need to continue winning games, and it's not really something you look at and go, this is going to be an easy matchup. It's really not. Avila 5-0 all-time in the series, won 39-9 last year. And even though Ottawa defeated Sterling last week, one of Avila's 2 wins came last week as well. A 35-17 victory over Tabor stopped a 6-game slide, trying to get some momentum here. But we're going with Winton Ruth, 89.3 rushing yards per game. He's had 3 consecutive 100-yard rushing games. We think he's going to get a 4th on the road, and we're picking Ottawa in this one. Kansas Wesleyan also trying to make some noise in that Bissell division. Kansas Wesleyan now at 6-2 after a couple of tough losses in crossover play, taking on Tabor on the road. Kansas Wesleyan has won 5 consecutive games. We think that's going to go to 6 with a win over Tabor. Back to the GPAC. Why not? We go back and forth. Briarcliff 3-5, Dort 5-2. Dort not out of the running for a playoff spot. There is some distance between them and that top spot in the GPAC, but the defenders still looking good on the season. The defense has been strong. It continues to be strong. Lost to a very tough Northwestern team, number 1 team in the country. They're at home in this one. Dort's won 7 straight in this, and it's interesting to see how this series has gone between these 2 schools. Briarcliff won the first 8 matchups between these 2 programs. Dort has won the last 7. A win here would even the record at 8-8, and we think that's what's going to happen. To the North Star, while there is a North Star, Valley City State 5-2, Mayville State 2-6. Both teams picked up a win last week. It was a big win for the Comets, 20-7 over Waldorf. Valley City State held on a touchdown victory by Dakota State, or over Dakota State. Valley City State won the first time these 2 teams met, 24-21 earlier this year. We think Mayville State may have found something and is going to pick up the victory at home. That would mean these 2 teams would split for the season. Another big victory. As a matter of fact, we have a big game. We have 2 games back-to-back that we would give these games a name, and that name would be the head coach of one of the 2 teams. To the Kessinger division now of the KCAC. Friends 6-2, Bethel 5-3. This is the Terry Harrison Bowl, Year 2 edition, and Bethel has won 4 straight in this series, including last year after Terry Harrison left Bethel to move to Friends. Coach A.B. Stokes took over the program, part of the Harrison coaching staff at the time, so those 2 are no strangers to one another. And by the way, I was there at that game. At the start of the season, it was a very, very cold and rainy September night. I know, cold September night. It really was. Friends, 47-25 all-time in this series. But Bethel, as we mentioned, has won 4 straight. And these are 2 very, very good quarterbacks in this ground game. Cavante Baker, 117.8 rushing yards per game. That's 6th in the NAI. 17 rushing touchdowns. For Bethel, DJ Sears, 122.8 rushing yards per game. That's 4th in the NAI. He has 11 rushing touchdowns as well. Friends, we picked Friends on the road last week. They lost to Evangel. Bethel defeated Southwestern last week, 20-13. These are two look like Frontier Conference games. Friends lost to Evangel, 31 points scored. Bethel lost to Southwest or defeated Southwestern, 33 points scored. We're going with Friends on the road one more time as the Falcons get things turned around against what will probably be a very, very strong defensive effort again from Bethel. These two programs know one another very, very well. We'll see how this one turns out. We're taking Friends on the road. Second consecutive week, by the way. We've done that. We'll see. How about another game that has a name? This one, the Chris Oliver Bowl. Lindsey Wilson, 6-1. Georgetown, 5-1. Could be a playoff spot on the line here. Now, there's still a lot to be said in the Mid-South, and I know we'll talk about Bethel here in just a moment. But Lindsey Wilson, 9-4 all-time, and this series split as Georgetown won the first 4 in this series. Lindsey Wilson has won 9 since then. And that included a 23-17 victory in the Mid-South season finale last year. Really propelled Lindsey Wilson on into a playoff spot. Lindsey Wilson defeated Cumberland's last week. Georgetown defeated Faulkner. The Blue Raiders are putting up 44.4 points per game. That's third in the NAIA. But again, Coach Oliver and Coach Phil Kleckler know one another very well. The programs know one another very well. Lindsey Wilson won this game last year. Just like we mentioned in the one prior, we think the other team will win this year. We're picking Georgetown at home in this one. Speaking of the Mid-South, how about we go to Bethel? 7-1. The Wildcats were undefeated in the regular season in 2022. Didn't get a playoff win last year. Have one win already on the docket and have proven that they know how to survive coming back from a win. Bethel has 44.1 points per game, just behind what Lindsey Wilson is putting up. And they're led by Joaquin Collazo, 277.9 passing yards per game, 5th in the NAIA. Bethel continues to roll. And I could talk about more. I mean, I could spend another 5 minutes if my voice had it in me to talk about Demetrius Gilbert and what this defense is doing too. Bethel 5-4-1 all time in the series, won big time last year. We think that Bethel's going to win again this year. Wow, we have a lot more games on the docket. I'm going to make it. Thanks for watching Midwest Sports Net, and thanks for watching our coverage here as we talk about the NAIA football schedule for week number 9. And if you're watching us live, again, please let us know from where you're watching. We would appreciate that. Voice has struggled over the course of the week. Hope to have it back by Sunday night's live stream at 8 p.m. Central Time, 7 p.m. Mountain on Sunday night. If you're watching from Oregon, it would be 6 p.m. So please be sure and tune in for that. Texas Wesleyan, Texas College. Tell you what, we're not going to spend too much more time on some of these. The Rams are going to pick up another win, and it puts them in a good position as they continue to move through this season. They're going to be taking on Louisiana Christian in what could be for a playoff spot. Final game of the season. We think the Rams keep the Steers in the 0-win column, or 0 in the win column there. Judson 0-6, Roosevelt 5-3. Lakers are putting themselves in a position for a playoff spot as well. We think they continue to roll. Judson remains winless in this one. We're picking Roosevelt. North American on the road at Oklahoma Panhandle State. And this is the first time these two teams have ever met. It's going to be a Sooner Athletic Conference matchup between the two teams. We're picking the Aggies. Moving on along, Sagu on the road at Louisiana Christian. Talked about the Wildcats. They are headed toward that matchup with Texas Wesleyan as well. Need to keep on winning. And, it could be a 3-way tie heading into that final week of the season with Louisiana Christian, Texas Wesleyan, and Ottawa. But everyone has to play their part. So we think the Wildcats are going to come off a loss from last week and pick up a win this week. OUAZ, speaking of the team that needs to do its part, it needs to pick up a win on the road at Langston, which, by the way, there's another game I was at last season. Total opposite, by the way, of what the Friends Bethel game was. It was a homecoming game at Langston. Huge. I mean, homecoming shuts down the town. Literally shuts down the town. And I know how to use the word literally. And it does. Thousands of people there on campus to see Langston pull off an overtime victory, a defensive touchdown, as it was a 44-38. That was the final in overtime last year. Langston's 3-2 all-time against Ottawa. I like watching the Lions play. I think Torrance Bardell has a lot going on. Luke Giron has stepped it up, though, for Ottawa, and this is a Spirit team that needs to pick up a win to stay in playoff contention. A loss here realistically puts them out. We're going to go with Ottawa in this one with the victory over Langston. Waldorf 4-4, Dickinson State 6-1. Both teams led by very, very strong running games. Waldorf, Jatovier Hill, 125 yards per game, third in the NAIA. Dickinson State, Braden Zuroff, 107 yards per game rushing, 11th in the NAIA. 12 and 10 touchdowns respectively for the two. Dickinson State 10-1 all-time, won 41-14 earlier this year. This is the second matchup. We picked Dickinson State in this one. Eastern Oregon on the road at College of Idaho. The Yotes have picked up steam. They've won 7 straight in this series. They've dominated the series 33-10. Andy Peters is rolling at 252 plus passing yards per game, 20 passing touchdowns. College of Idaho is putting up 43.3 points per game, and their men's basketball team, coming off a national championship last year, has been picked as the number 1 team in the country in the NAIA men's basketball ranking, not rating. So why not? We're going to go with College of Idaho in this one on Saturday. How about Wayland Baptist on the road at Arkansas Baptist? The Pioneers lost last week. The Buffaloes lost last week. We think in this first ever meeting between these two schools, the Buffaloes could make some noise at home there in Little Rock. Montana State Northern, Montana Western. I've been a fan of the Bulldogs all through the season and how Coach Norse has been able to make things happen. Eli Norse, by the way, the second leading receiver, according to receiving yards, in the NAIA coming into this game. And it's due, I think, not only in part to what he's done, but like Michael Palandri has stepped in and become quite a solid quarterback. 16 passing touchdowns this year, 252 passing yards per game. And that's part of a balanced offense because Montana Western also putting up a little more than 200 yards rushing per game, 459 yards of total offense per game, 4th in the NAIA. We're taking the Bulldogs at home to continue to fight for a spot in the playoffs. They're fighting with Carroll, who's 6-1 also. Southern Oregon on the road, Southern Oregon at home. Southern Oregon 9-8 all-time in this series. Now, Carroll won both contests in 2022, one by 7, one by 12. Carroll lost to College of Idaho in its last outing, snapped an 11-game regular season winning streak. We know that Vegas doesn't have a line on NAIA games, but if they did, no matter how many points that Carroll would be giving up, we think Southern Oregon would cover, but the Saints would have just enough in the end. So we're picking Carroll in this one to get the victory. We go from one coast out to the other, to St. Thomas on the road at Warner. Warner struggling, coming off that loss to Thomas. St. Thomas still fighting for what could be an at-large bid, and they're in the NAIA rankings high enough right now that they could pick up that at-large bid, but the Bobcats need to continue to pick up victories. We think they're going to do it on the road at Warner. Bluefield, tough loss last week to Pikeville. 3-4 on the season. How do you turn things around? You take on a Kentucky Christian team that's put 30 points on the board all season long. 18 of them, by the way, last week. Bluefield on the road in this one. Cumberland's 5-3. Campbellsville 4-3. And it's been a good season for both of them, as a matter of fact. Cumberland's in the series between the two, by the way, has won 7 consecutive games. Both teams lost in their last outing, and both teams lost to Lindsey Wilson. Cumberland's a couple of weeks ago, 48-14. Campbellsville last week, 35-14. But Campbellsville's led by Jagger Gillis, who's putting up nearly 300 passing yards per game, 295.4 to be exact. He's third in the NAIA. They're playing at home. We think that Campbellsville is going to turn this around in this series and pick up the win and stop a 7-game slide. We're almost done. We're in the home stretch. By the way, Aaron, thank you very much for watching from Fargo, North Dakota. I've already talked about the Comets a little bit earlier and think that they may have something going on right now. We'll see. Anyway, Florida Memorial on the road at Southeastern. A couple of teams from back east here at the very, very end. Both teams 4-3, and both teams struggled a bit last week. Florida Memorial picks up the win, but it was a tough one against Weber International, just by 5 points. Southeastern lost by 30 to Kaiser. Southeastern at home rights the ship. 3-0 all-time in this series. We think they're going to go to 4-0 all-time in the series, get the win over Florida Memorial. And speaking of Kaiser, on the road at Ave Maria, some very good running backs involved in this one, including Brian Steinke for the Gyrenes, leading the NAIA at 161.2 rushing yards per game. He's tops in that category, but he has only 8 rushing touchdowns. Now, Jaden Meisinger, by the way, has nearly half that number of rushing yards per game, slightly more at 81.9 rushing yards per game, but he has 3 more rushing touchdowns. They've taken advantage of his ground game when they needed to do just that. And so Meisinger on the road against Kaiser. Kaiser 4-1 all-time in this series. Kaiser is in the position to take the Sun Conference automatic bid if the Seahawks win out. We think they're going to do that. We are taking the Kaiser Seahawks in that one. And we have made it now to the end of the schedule. Wow. Not quite 45 minutes on the clock there. I think that went okay. Back, by the way, to the Friends and Bethel game. A big impact on how the division shakes out. No question about that. I mean, it's not Evangel's division just yet, as the Valor need to go ahead and win out in this one. But the Valor put themselves in a very good position overall. But you look back on that, and let me bring that back up if I can find that right here. It wasn't that far away. You look at the records here, Bethel, it would be a challenge to get Bethel into the playoffs at this point in time, especially being out of the NAIA rankings. Friends, not really in the NAIA rankings either, but would be in a better position to, if they won out at 9-2, to creep back in to the top 25 of the coaches' ranking system. And so, yeah, I mean, this could have a big impact on how it all shakes out. If Evangel takes care of business and wins out, and Friends gets the victory here, well, it could be Evangel and Friends, and there could be 3 KCAC teams. You're right. Just to comment on that, I appreciate, by the way, you commenting on that too. This one should be a fun game to watch. It really, really should be a fun one to watch and to keep up with. For those of you who are watching this live stream, and by the way, if you're watching this on the replay and you've watched all the way to this point, I can't even tell you how thankful I am. It's been a struggle. The voice has been gone most of the week, and I hope to have it back by Sunday as we talk about some of these games and talk about top 5 performances and more. But I can't say enough about you sticking around to the very end. So thank you for doing that. I appreciate you all watching today. Subscribe to the channel, by the way, if you haven't yet subscribed. Excuse me. And I need a cough button so I can to mute that there. But subscribe to the channel and continue to watch the videos here. We're working to get that 4,000 hours watched, and we want it to definitely be able to monetize it and more. Thanks for everything and for being part of the show today. We will be back on Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 8 p.m. Central, 6 p.m. out on the Pacific time zone slot. And I encourage you to be a part of that. Meantime, God bless you all. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great, great day and enjoy some NAIA football tomorrow.